For 40 years, Michael Myers has haunted this town. He is the essence of evil, and evil dies tonight.
Halloween Kills, rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parent. In theaters and streaming only on Peacock now.
Who's ready to score some free bets? You can when you bet on any NFL game this week with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. New customers who bet just $1 on either team to score can win $100 in free bets. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code TUNEIN. This week at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older. Virginia only. New customers only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call the Virginia Problem Gambling Helpline at 888-532-3500.
Welcome to Destiny. Now here's your host, Cliff Dunning.
There's so much that we do that we don't pay attention to. We get up every day, we go to work, or we have our daily activities. And most of us, I should say not most of us, but many of us are not really thoughtful about the subtleties of life or being mindful. And today we're going to talk about what mindfulness is, as well as how to discover or rediscover the joy of being or finding pleasure in our surroundings. And why is this important? Well, I am guilty of just waking up and going about my activities of the day without really paying attention of the subtleties. And I live in Northern California, one of the most beautiful places in the world. And each of us lives in a place that has its own unique beauty, its pleasures. Obviously, we wouldn't be living in those locations. But today, I want to talk about being mindful. And when we speak about being mindful, we have to think about the person who coined the term mindfulness, and that's Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn, who started the Mindful Institute. Actually, it's called the Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction Program that he started in 1979. And what does mindfulness mean? Mindfulness means maintaining a moment-by-moment awareness of our thoughts, feelings, body sensations, and surrounding environment through a gentle, nurturing lens. That's actually the term that Dr. Kabat-Zinn came up with many, many years ago. I had John on the program here in San Francisco a couple of different times. And it's funny, when you think of being mindful, it's like, well, I don't want to have to be thinking about what I'm up to, how I'm feeling every 10 seconds. It's not something that you have to do all the time, but just enough to be cognizant of what is happening rather than just being a robot and going through your day. And again, I am guilty of this. I have had many, many times, gotten up and gone through my day without really thinking about what I'm doing. It's just like a routine. And most of us, or many of us, follow this pattern. It's really important to be more actively mindful of how you're going about your day, because then you find the subtleties. You appreciate what you're doing. You appreciate who you are more. And this goes to self-esteem. This goes to greater pleasure. And a little bit later in the program, we have an author talking about pleasure, the healing. The title of her book is The Healing Power of Pleasure, and how we identify this, how we go about it, and not get stuck in a rut. And so these are subtleties that we're talking about today, and their importance. Now, I have a short interview with Dr. Kabat-Zinn, and he explains what mindfulness is. And this is really short, but it's important to hear from the man himself what mindfulness does for us and why it's so important in our insanely busy, active lives to pay attention to. So have a quick listen.
Mindfulness is actually a way of connecting with your life. And it's something that doesn't involve a lot of energy. It involves kind of cultivating attention in a particular way. So the way I define it is it's paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. And then I like to add sometimes as if your life depended on it. Because it does. Attention is the faculty that allows us to navigate our lives in one way or another and to actually know what's happening or know that we don't know what's happening and find ways to be in a wiser relationship to things that are going on in our lives than being at the mercy, say, of our own emotional reactions and crazy thoughts and fears and so forth. So it's paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally, as if your life depended on it. So paying attention to what, you might ask? Well, it doesn't actually matter. It's the attending itself that's important, more important than what it is that you're paying attention to. But that said, if you start to pay attention to how much attention we pay to anything, you begin to notice that the mind is all over the place. It never sits still. It's got this idea and that opinion and this reaction, and we spend a huge amount of time planning and worrying about the future, and a huge amount of time reminiscing about the past and who did what to whom, or why it worked out this way, or why it didn't work out this way. And the present moment, which is the only time that we're ever alive in, the only time we could learn anything, express any kind of love or emotion, the only time we could be in our own body, the only time we can see or hear or smell or taste or touch or communicate, is now. And yet the present moment gets completely squeezed out by all of our preoccupation with the future and the past. When we start to pay attention to our own mind and our own body, it's like reclaiming your life. Mindfulness is not a technique, although there are many, many different ways to cultivate mindfulness. It's actually a way of being embodied, being in some sense in equilibrium with the comings and goings of the outer world, and even the comings and goings and the ups and downs of having a body, which of course has its wonders and is also at sometimes seriously problematic when we're dealing with health problems of one kind or another, or things that can happen to the body. And as long as we have this capacity for awareness, why not develop it? Much of the time, if you think about our educational system and how we grow up, we are trained more and more and more to get into thinking. And thinking is wonderful stuff, very powerful. Some of the greatest achievements of humanity come out of thought, and out of imagination and out of creativity. But the other piece of it that's equally as powerful as the capacity for thought is the capacity for awareness. But we get no training in awareness and attention, huge amount of training in thought. So a lot of the time when we get into bed at the end of a long day, we can't deal with our thoughts, and we can't sleep. They just kind of perseverate over and over and over again. The same thoughts, we want to shut them out. The more you try to shut them out, the more they come in, and pretty soon you don't get to sleep, or you wind up with, basically chronic anxiety or some kind of condition or other. Depressive rumination can spiral you into depression, a little bit of sadness, and then that triggers this kind of perseverating constantly, what's wrong with me, why don't people like me, why didn't she look at me, whatever it is. These are all thoughts. I'm no good, I'm too old, my life it's all downhill from here. All of those things, they're only thoughts, but most of the time we think of them as the truth. So what mindfulness does in a way is it embraces the actuality of the mind, the heart, the body, and our relationality with the outer world, and gives us new degrees of freedom to navigate the ups and the downs and the ins and outs of our relationships with life, with other people, with our own aspirations and our own fears. and also, and most fundamentally, with our own body. Now, most of us don't want to go anywhere near our own body except under very specialized circumstances at particular times. It seems like, wow, it's wonderful to have these bodily experiences. But a lot of the time, we're just pretty much up here. Thinking, and really believing so many of these thoughts as the truth that we wind up in a very narrow band of what's actually possible for us in terms of our human experience.
I hear a lot in what that definition is, and I think the most important is again, to be aware of yourself, to be aware of your environment, and to recognize that you are filled with emotions, that you have good days and bad days. But when you bring it back into understanding what you're up to, what you're thinking, what your body feels like, I think it is really the ultimate wellness technique. Mindfulness is wellness for me. That's my definition of it. And this is critical for longevity, and also to live more fully, to recognize where you're at, how you're feeling, what's going on. And I think it leads into our next topic today, which is pleasure. And we're going to hear in a little bit from the author for the day, Julia Paulette Hollenberry, who has written a book called The Healing Power of Pleasure, 7 Medicines for Rediscovering the Innate Joy of Being. So it's all about self-awareness, self-healing, and ultimate wellness today on Destiny.
Looking for a way to make some quick cash? Well, making money with DoorDash is super easy, guys. I love riding my bike around the city, and now I get to do that while getting paid. With DoorDash, I get to pick my own hours and be my own boss. I get paid on my deliveries and keep 100% of my tips. Not to mention the sign-up process was so quick and easy. Guys, I'm telling you, just download the DoorDash driver app and see how easy it is to start earning cash today.
Cloud is powering tomorrow's transformative missions. Federal agencies are partnering with SAIC to help them meet these critical moments, where bold moves require confident blueprints, where you can accelerate transformation through consistency, where you can innovate forward and never look back. SAIC quickly and securely migrates large-scale workloads to the cloud with the confidence you need to assure your mission. Learn more at saic.com/cloud.
I haven't really woken up until I've had my McDonald's breakfast deal. And I know this is true because before breakfast, I put my phone in the refrigerator and couldn't find the keys that were already in my hand.
Nothing gets the morning going like the first sip of an iced coffee. Get any size and any flavor for 99 cents until 11 a.m. Price and participation may vary.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. McDonald's. I'm loving it.
Time to check in with our specialist. That is Dr. Pepper Hernandez, and that means it is Conversations on Cannabis time here on Destiny. And this week, we are addressing your questions from our audience members who are new to cannabis or they have been using it and they have some questions. So, Dr. Pepper, how are you? How you doing?
Hi there, Cliff. I'm doing wonderfully. Thank you.
Okay, where are you? You're on the East Coast. You're doing your
I am.
trek. Where have you been visiting? Give us a quick.
Oh my goodness. I have been all over the East Coast. I've been up here, as you know, it's fall time, autumn, and I've been doing the foliage, viewing
Mm-hmm.
And so I started in Oklahoma, did Missouri up through, I don't know, a bunch of places.
This
West
is all
Virginia,
driving your new outfitted
my
van. Your beautiful.
Yeah, my ProMaster. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a ProMaster Dodge van, and I'm doing the hashtag van
who's your
life.
travel mate?
Oh, my co-pilot is the trusty Riley dog.
Riley
and he
dog.
is phenomenal.
Riley the cannabis dog.
Yeah, he's pretty much phenomenal at doing nothing except for laying around. He is he does not bark. I should tell this on live air, but yeah, he's not that great of a security dog is a side note that I wanted to
interesting.
share.
He won't bark as somebody's coming close to the van then, huh?
No, he doesn't really care. He just, he lives in bliss. He thinks everyone's a good human, which I do too. So,
okay.
But yeah, I've been out for about a year. I've been out for about a month now, looking for cannabis dispensaries and farms. I spent the last few weeks in New York, upstate New York, and now I'm down in Connecticut, Rhode Island area.
So where did you stay for Halloween? And did you have some a costume you would like to tell us about?
These are great questions, Cliff. I love these new questions. I was in Salem, Massachusetts for a week.
You were at the witches, home of the witch hunt or whatever. I can't remember what it was.
I did the witch museum and looked and read and listened and watched all about the witch trials. And I went and visited the burial grave and the memorial.
Wow.
And spent a week there in Salem for Halloween. It was wonderful. Oh, and I went to, right after that, I went to Lizzie Borden's home.
Jesus, these are all axe murderers and horrible. I mean, we talked about this. She's doing all these things that would scare the hell out of me, but she's like, I'm doing them. I'm going to go do these things.
Why. I'm just fascinated by interesting things. And I also went to an insane asylum. Remember that on the drive up to Salem?
Oh my God.
I went to the most famous and most haunted, I suppose, insane asylum. It was in Weston, West Virginia. I went there for a couple days. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just fascinated by the beauty of old buildings and history. And I don't really, I don't really partake in the spooky part. I get, nice and cuddled in and safe before it gets dark.
But you were curious about these different phenomenon of the human condition.
I think maybe the phenomena concerning or around it, more of the people who get involved in it, but the history of what actually happened.
So is there an actual witch graveyard in Salem where they've actually buried these people that were murdered by the local magistrate?
That's exactly what it was. And yes, there is a memorial with each and every one of the accused names and the dates on it.
Amazing.
Yeah, so you can visit that memorial and the graveyard that's near it, and the old homes, the old houses and buildings where a lot of these things took place is all still there.
Wow. Fascinating. Well, good for you. You are now returning back to Oklahoma. Sounds like you had a great time and you learned a lot about East Coast. We'll have to talk more in the future about the cultivators and the farms and the dispensaries that you discovered on the East Coast. I think people will get an earful of what you've discovered. Okay, here are some questions from our listeners. The first one comes from John, who is in New York. John says, I was in a car accident this past spring and have been dealing with serious neck and back pain. My doctor prescribed muscle relaxants and pain medications, but I don't like how I feel when I take them. He asked, can you suggest a cannabis strain that will relieve my pain? John from New York.
Oh, goodness, John. This one is very specific. And again, I would suggest working with a cannabis consultant or someone in that department that can really dial it in, because it depends on what type of prescription drugs that the physician, the primary care, has given. And if that person is if John is going to continue taking those, then he needs to work with someone who is also going to work with those prescription drugs, so who knows a lot of the road there. Yeah. But what can be safely done, easily done, is when we're talking about pain, we're also talking about inflammation of joints, okay, muscles, tendons, ligaments, joints. And so CBD is really good for inflammation. Now you want whole plant source, real deal CBD. You don't want isolate or any of those kind of things. So there are a few cultivars or strains that can be good for that. But really what we're looking for is terpenes and the cannabinoids and the application method. So some people can, really enjoy smoking. And I'll give you a couple strains that people enjoy smoking for pain relief. But really, it could be that compounded with a topical that someone could place on their body, especially someone like John who's gone through that kind of an accident. But anything having to really do with blueberry are going to be my suggestions. Blueberry cushions, blueberry headbands, that kind of thing. The reason why is because that's going to tell you that it's heavier in linalool. And other things are like AC/DC. That's a great CBD inflammation tincture that could be helpful. But for smoking, I'd kind of go with the blueberries. The terpenes that you want to look for, if you're working with strains for pain specific, are caryophyllene, myrcene, which is going to be found in almost every cannabis cultivar, and then linalool. Linalool's for relaxation. So if you can find a strain that you like that's pretty heavy on the kush side, which means it's going to be more indica dominant, then you're going to find a winner. And so he might just have to ask, a couple dispensaries, to help give him samples and try different things.
That's a good idea.
And I think it's going to be a combination of things, a topical, maybe even a tincture, as well as a smokable flower.
Yeah. I mean, he said serious neck and back pain. So maybe he's dealing with whiplash, which can damage not only the cervical spinal, the small vertebrae that are in the neck, but the back and the shoulders. That can really can grow into all kinds of problems. Would you suggest, as a final note for John, a higher level of THC strain, or does it really matter?
Well, it's going to be more indica dominant. And when we're talking about indica dominant kush, that does suggest THC heavy. But we do have to remember, if he's using prescription drugs and other things like that, we want to microdose, go slow and steady, and find things that are going to work for you if you've tried things. We don't want anything that's uplifting or stimulating for John.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So
there are THC. Yeah, there are THC heavy cultivars, but those could be very stimulating. So it's that combination, right? That terpene cannabinoid combination.
Okay, cool. I hope that helped you, John. All right, our next question comes from Joan in New Mexico. Joan writes, I am a writer and have been dealing with a creative block for the last few weeks. Can you recommend something that can unblock the dam? Joan.
Oh, I love that. Unblock the dam. Well, this is a great question, Cliff, and maybe you can even tap in here. But the idea is to start activating dopamine within the brain, right? And that is going to get your creative juices flowing, whether that be running or hiking, some kind of physical activity to get dopamine in the brain and then your blood circulating, whether that's meditation and mantras. All these things can help. On top of that, yes, there are some cannabis cultivars that are known for a little bit more creativity. And so this can be kind of the opposite of the suggestions that we gave John just a moment ago. These are going to be more sativa dominant. They're going to have energy. They're going to give you stimulation, blood flow. The terpenes, and I'll give you a list of some of the creative cannabis strains or cultivars that you can look for, but the goal here is to focus on terpenes and cannabinoids. Now, those cannabinoids THC is very stimulating. So it depends on if you're a newbie to cannabis or you're a connoisseur. If you're a connoisseur, you can get some really THC heavy. If you're a newbie, go slow, get something really low in THC, maybe 18%. Don't go for the 32 right away. Go for something super low. But those terpenes you're going to look for are like alpha pinene, and we can recognize that as that pine smell.
Right.
And that's kind of uplifting and awakening, right? Limonene, which smells kind of like a lime or a lemon, like that citrusy smell. That's really invigorating and wakes you up. And then beta caryophyllene. And that's kind of like peppery. That's one that's going to stimulate you. So if you're looking for those kind of heavy profiles with your cannabis cultivars, then you're going to have more success in that creative department. And, if you do this alongside with diet, exercise, meditation, like you're going to get back on your flow, Joan, really easily.
Yeah. My suggestion real quickly is that if you're really having a block, try a short detox. And that would be try not to eat for most of the day, drink fluids, teas, cut out any alcohol, anything that's a strong stimulant, and kind of restart the body. I would try that for real serious blockages that you've been blocked for months or whatever. Extend it a few days, do a detox and read whatever detox feels right to you. But for at least the first day of the week or the first start, try to fast if you can on just liquids for the full day. So that's my suggestion. And
I like those.
That works for me.
Before we move on to the next question, I would like to give you some of the cultivars. So if someone really does want to choose cannabis for creativity and say they've done all those things and they're still just not there and they want just a little creative spark, something that's going to have those terpenes like we were talking about, plus those cannabinoids, the CBD and THC, are anything that's going to say haze. So silver haze, purple haze, those are some of my favorite ones. There's some that have interesting names like LSD. That is a good strain for creativity. Again, low and slow for all these. And let me make sure people are understanding the name of the strain of cannabis is LSD. There's also
I was going to ask you that. I haven't heard of that one.
The name of the strain is LSD. So we're not promoting LSD. I was going to say,
is this a microdosing segment with? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, we're not promoting LSD on our program. We are saying low and slow with the cannabis cultivar named LSD. Okay. So there's also sour diesel. There's an old school one called Maui Wowie, which is everybody knows that's a great one for creativity. Another one's Blue Dream. I love Blue Dream personally. It's light and fluffy and easy. Yeah. So just make sure that you're choosing the right combination for your body.
Excellent. All right, we've run out of time. For more information on Dr. Pepper Hernandez, go to drpepperhernandez.com. She has courses. She has information. Tons of articles. She'll also lead you to YouTube where you can see videos of her making preparations. And if you'd like to know more about becoming a professional or using cannabis as a business, you can also take courses that she offers through cannabisholisticinstitute.com. Check that out. All right. Excellent. Pepper, any last thoughts on today's topics?
No, thanks so much. Those are great questions. I enjoyed doing this segment.
All right. Excellent. And we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks.
Simplify your federal agency's technology procurement with Connection Public Sector Solutions. Connection's dedicated account managers, commitment to exceptional customer service, and extensive catalog of federal contracts make IT purchases quick, easy, and affordable. Turn your challenges into opportunities and get rid of your technology pain points with Connection today. Learn more about what's possible with Connection Public Sector Solutions at connection.com/fedcontracts.
Everybody needs just the right amount of fuel to get going in the morning. For some, a nice McDonald's egg and cheese bagel is just enough to do it. Others might prefer a McDonald's bacon, egg, and cheese bagel. Or perhaps a sausage, egg, and cheese bagel. And there are those where nothing will do but a hearty McDonald's steak, egg, and cheese bagel. 4 different breakfast bagels to get you going. Tomorrow morning, give your engine a head start at participating McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Introducing Peacock, the new free streaming service from NBC Universal. It's hit movies, current shows, live sports, trending bits, and timeless hits. And that's why you can't not watch. Peacock. Watch for free, upgrade for more. Stream now at peacocktv.com. Law & Order SVU streaming now.
Today we're going to look at what it means to be physical, pleasure, what is our pleasure, what is our sensations, and how our lifestyles can impede on finding gratification, finding pleasure in our daily experience. And this is becoming a great problem for a lot of us. And I have a wonderful new book and an author that I'm going to talk to you about here. The book is called The Healing Power of Pleasure, 7 Medicines for Rediscovering the Innate Joy of Being. And the author today is Julia Paulette Hollenberry, and she is coming to us today from London. And, you know, I talk about the importance of tools for transformation on Discovery. Every week I bring this up. And this book not only defines our problems of not being able to receive pleasure or being blocked from it, but it has what the author Julia calls the medicine of unblocking this pleasure that we all need. So, Julia, welcome to Destiny. Great to have you with us.
Thank you. Great to be here. And the book does feel like my destiny. That's what's making me laugh.
Oh, is it really? Because it's wonderful how you put it together. I have to ask you, I mean, before we started, you were saying I'm basically a facilitator. I am helping others. What motivated you to write this book? Because it is not only in depth, but it really highlights the human condition.
There was absolutely no choice. As a child, I knew that I would write a book. And half a lifetime ago, I began writing the first raw emotional part of the book. It was a bit of a rant and an outpouring. One poem from that first version made it into the final version. And a few years ago, I can't tell you what happened, but I began. And it was a tremendous outpouring. So I wrote what my heart knows and wanted to share and wants to share. And it's for everyone who's having a not easy time to know that it is absolutely possible to heal and survive and thrive. And it is reminding us, I hope will remind us, that the body is where life is lived, that there is a great deal more pleasure possible than most of us usually live.
Interesting. What is it about our fast-paced society that is damaging and traumatic that doesn't allow us the full pleasure that you describe in this book?
Wow, modernity is so fast and so stimulating. It's absolutely non-stop. And that alone takes us out of our bodies. I think most of us have small traumas every day when things are literally overwhelming and too much for us to be able to cope with. And then, of course, there's all our life stories and the difficulties of not having been seen by our parents or our teachers. there's all that grief. And we live in a culture that glamorizes suffering, glamorizes us having a punishingly difficult time. Yeah. And that's not fair. And it's not the whole story.
How do you define pleasure? I mean, it's funny because the book title is The Healing Power of Pleasure. What is pleasure? And I mean, I can say, on a physical level, I like sex, I like food, but it's more than just that. It's a whole plethora of sensations. But what is your definition of it?
I think it's everything. All of those included. We live in sensitive and sensual bodies in a sensitive and sensual world. So pleasure is possible all of the time, actually, if we choose to receive it. It's possible from, I kind of want to say anything and anybody, which might sound a little bit weird, but actually it's possible to touch your fingertips on the bark of a tree and for that to be absolutely delicious. Or in this moment, my hand has reached out to touch the wall and that is surprisingly pleasant. I can see you breathing with relaxation, even as I mention this, the return to the body, or to really notice that our bums are on a chair and there's sensation there, or our feet on the ground, right? Mm-hmm. And there is absolutely choosing the pleasure of a delicious coffee with cream, or a salad, or a steak, or, a beautiful room, or anything that gives us pleasure. And also, the pleasure is the reward, if you like, of the inner journey. It is the nectar. It is the treasure for doing our good work. And that is subtle and delicious, and we melt and we break open with pleasurableness.
It's so fun to hear you say that, because I think that we all think of, well, I mean, I shouldn't say we all. I just finished writing a book on cannabis and male sexuality, and it's all about sex in the book. So I'm thinking, okay, she's talking about sex. But there's so many other sensory delights that you bring up. I'm just going to read through a few here. Appetite, desire, libido, aliveness, energy. I mean, just the thought of energy being pleasurable. You're right. When we're out exercising,
right,
that can really be a pleasurable experience, can it?
Yeah, all of it can. I found recently the brushing my teeth was pleasurable, but absolutely exercise in nature, throwing a ball back and forth with each other. And of course, it's different for everybody and in every moment. And absolutely, we are also talking about human intimacy here. Absolutely.
Wow. Let's talk about the issues that damage our pleasure. You list 7, and I'd like you to talk about them because they're very, very important. Feeling unseen. I find that interesting. Talk about how that is damaging to our pleasure.
I think all babies and children naturally want to reach out to their caregivers. They want to be seen. There's like an opening movement. Look at me, right? Look at me. And we want to be recognized. We want to be approved of. We want to be noticed in our unique, specific detail as we are. And when we're not noticed, then it is disappointing and we kind of shrivel and shrink backwards. And sometimes after a while, we might even give up and not try anymore to go, look, Mum, can't you see that I'm loving you? Can't you see that I'm loving you in my way? And it's really important for the soul to be truly seen.
Talk about the adult version of that, though. When you're in a group and people aren't paying, is it kind of the same thing? People aren't paying attention to you, or they seem to dismiss you casually.
Right.
What, on the adult level, give us some examples of being unseen and how that hurts our pleasure.
Well, it's both at work and socially. You know, those, dynamics of, oh, I'm better than you and I'm in this clique and you're not. Those silly little things of, I'll remove my eyes from you, or I won't like your social media post, or at a social gathering, I'll chat with this person and not let you in. And that hurts. It hurts when we're not seen and noticed, when someone doesn't really turn to us and say, how are you and how is your work and how's it going with this or that, then we feel hurt. And it might only be small and we might skip over it and pretend it's not there because it's not necessarily cool, after all, to admit that we're hurt by some casual remark, right? And so we again shrink and withdraw, and we don't trust the outside world. We don't trust ourselves. We don't dare. We might be less brave. We might show or reveal less of our real, authentic selves. And that's intimately connected with pleasure.
Wonderful. I wanted to mention to our audience that you're a therapist, a body worker, a mystic, a healer, and a facilitator. So you come by this obviously by working with others and seeing their wounds, their traumas, and working with how to perhaps relieve your clients of their issues. Is that how you would approach that definition or that point of view on your work?
I think it comes from different places. Yes, I've spent over 25 years working with individuals and groups. And also I've made my own big journey over decades. And also, I guess I came in with my own piece of wisdom, my own knowing. So all of those pieces come into play. I've seen how people are hurt, what it's like, and what it's like to feel free and relieved and beautiful and handsome and playful and delighted to be present in the body and free of physical pain and emotional pain. That's an amazing thing.
Wonderful. Let's continue on with these list of 7 issues, because I think it's important that our audience understand how these impede pleasure. The second item that you list here is stress. Now, to me, that's a big one, because when you're under stress, you're not feeling anything but either get the job done, get over with it, or whatever. You don't want to think about anything other than getting over the stress. So, but how do you define it?
Yeah, I mean, stress is when you're, there is just I can't even speak, which is kind of like what stress is like, right? You just are trying to go so fast to get these things done, to get relief. You can't think about anything else. Your perspective, one's perspective, our perspective becomes narrow. Time becomes very shortened. And very often people, in our attempts to get through the great to-do list, we may not move our bodies. We may spend hours in front of a computer or whatever it is. We may breathe less. We may become locked into physical positions where our head and neck are poked forward and our shoulders are raised. And these are like locked physical positions. And we might ignore the symptoms of the body. We might ignore the wish to eat or the wish to go to the toilet or the wish to rest. So under stress, we become desensitized to ourselves and we kind of crush ourselves smaller and stuck. And we do that to ourselves, right? Under stress.
I love that explanation. You know, we're sitting in our chair and we're not paying attention to our bodily functions because we got to get something done or we're under a deadline. And so we're suffering physically, but actually we're also blocking emotions and spiritual levels too. You're right. It's fascinating. The next one I wanted to really drill into, because you call it the masculinization of life. I guess over machismo and not allowing the feminine in. Or talk a little bit about that. That's an interesting one.
So I want to credit you. I've been doing lots of interviews about the book, and you're the first person who's really picked up on these points. And the masculinization of life is where we have taken the way that men operate to be the human normal. And there are gender differences, right? We all have different bodies, different qualities, different ways. And the masculinization of life is about straight lines. It's about what is visible and audible and measurable and achievable. And the feminine ways, the feminine qualities, the feminine energy is inclusive and relational and feeling. And those things have been disrespected by the over-masculinization. And that's why it matters, because it hurts both men and women. It hurts people of all genders to be forced to behave and to be judged according to this masculine way that assumes that separation and competition are the normal ways of doing things. And that's not the whole truth of life.
So the machismo can also translate to women too, who are following this male pattern. And it may not be their natural inclination, but to rise to the top of the corporate ladder, you got to be like one of the boys, right?
Absolutely.
And so you're giving up a lot.
It's like fighting with one's nature. And again, we're all different, right? This is not to do with gender. This is to do with qualities and principles and energy. And we are all absolutely different. But to try to make us all fit into a mold where we are all similar or the same is nonsensical. So it hurts all of us. We deny the parts of ourselves that are more sensual, more relational, more inclusive, more gentle, more deep, more spiritual, right? The invisible. It's so easy to disrespect the invisible from the masculinized point of view and say, don't talk nonsense. You know, you're making that up or that doesn't exist, and to disrespect it and say only the buildings exist that we have that we've made, and only the clocks that measure time according to the ways that we measure it exist. I don't think it's healthy for any of us. We need something different.
I love that. Okay, here we are. We're on number 4 of the 7. You call them the messy modernists, kind of the modernisms. The number 4 is a real problem for me too, which is inhuman technology. And I think this one hits home for a lot of us in the West because we're addicted to our iPhones. We're addicted to these walking computers that we cannot put away. I have this horrible problem of holding the phone whenever I have a few free minutes, and I think it's really not a good thing. I think they're going to start, and if they probably have already started, looking at the problems associated with lack of creativity, lack of motivation, and many other problems these phones are causing. But talk a little bit about the inhuman technology that is damaging our pleasure.
So many of us, most of us live in urban landscapes, and those are built by humans. And very often all people can see are the straight lines, the endless straight lines of human design, and they are missing seeing the irregular shapes of nature and the changing light patterns of nature. So that can be inhuman when we're surrounded only by man-made materials and man-made shapes. And the devices are, we talked earlier about being unseen. The devices are absolutely no replacement for a conversation with another person, right? And they are constantly, with their bleeps and flashes, interrupting our own thread, our own thought patterns, our own way of being, actually. And we become obsessed with the tiniest of details on these little flat devices. I think they hurt our fingers, they hurt our eyes, definitely over-visual. And so in the end, we are having relationships with artificial objects much more than we are with other human beings, animals, plants. And I think that's giving us a full sense of who we are and who the world is. I don't think it's helpful.
It's so funny you mentioned that we're having relationships with our technology, which are not human. They're technology. They can't respond, or if they do, it's artificial intelligence, and it's guessing about who you are. And so it's not a true heart-to-heart connection.
And I mean, one of the things is that because our devices respond so very fast to us, you know, we press a button and something happens, we start to have an expectation that other people ought to respond that quickly to us, right? And we become irritable when human beings are slower than our devices. That doesn't help anybody's real life relationship.
Yeah. It's so funny you mentioned relationship, because it's like, I have a huge problem with online dating. I think it's so artificial. I mean, I have friends that have actually met. In fact, my cousin got married. So I guess it works for a few people, but I just find it a challenge because there's so much of that interpersonal connection that's missing. But that could be just be me. So
I can say more, but I don't know how much you want to say on this topic.
Oh, please. Yeah.
No, I mean, there are also good things that are possible with the technology. The danger is when we mistake ourselves and others for machines.
All right. The next one is not authentic. I can't even say it here. I'm spitting it out. You're not an authentic person. So talk about that.
So we want others to like us in order that we belong and are part of the fabric of society, in order that we can survive. Childhood mechanism, also an adult mechanism. So many of us develop false personas. We present ourselves the way that we think other people want us to be. It's not just about making an avatar on your device or taking tweaking a photograph of yourself on your device, but it is behaving around the dinner table or at a party or at work the way that you think other people will like you. And that over time becomes really exhausting and demoralizing and isolating, because then again, yet again, we feel unseen, and again makes intimacy and pleasure seem more distant.
Wow. And number 6 is loneliness. I know a lot of us, especially with the pandemic, have been dealing with this because you have to self-isolate. You can't mingle. You can't see your friends things are slowly opening up again. But you're in London. England's been very hard hit. The whole pub industry has taken a beating. This is a social scene, and I hear it from my friends that live in England, that it's been really a challenge. So talk a little bit about loneliness and its damage to our pleasure.
all the things we've just been talking about feed into possibly feeling alone. Very often when we're hurt, also, we become embattled and isolate ourselves. Sometimes that feels like our best coping mechanism. But we're all hugely social creatures. We need to feel a part of the social fabric. We need the give and take, the exchange. And almost all of us are too much alone, arising from the things we were just saying, from not being really seen, from spending too much time on our devices, from feeling that we need to be a particular way. All those things can make the soul inside shrink or even give up because we feel that nobody knows the real me. And then we feel alone. You can be at a party surrounded by, many people and still feel alone. It's about being able to show up as we really are. And that's fundamental to pleasure and to the aliveness of life.
I like that definition. Okay, we're at the final number 7 of the issues that damage our pleasure, and that is fragmented selves. I think you've given us a little hint of that already, but define it a little better if you can, what a fragmented self is and how it impedes our pleasure.
So in modernity, we are rarely able to focus on just one thing and to be here now, as we would say spiritually. Very often people are at the gym moving their body, but their thoughts are somewhere else. Their eyes are watching a screen, the ears are listening to music. Very often we are eating a meal, being intimate with somebody, our bodies are in one place, our minds are somewhere else. Or another example, we're focusing on or trying to focus on a piece of work, but instead our thoughts are busy with the past and regrets and blame, or busy with the future and expectation and planning. And it means that we're in a million different places, except here and now. It's rare that we grant ourselves full attention, and it's rare that we grant other people full attention. We're distracted upon distraction by distraction, and that ain't good for any of us.
You break the book into 3 parts. You have the messy part, which is our wounds and our problems that are causing a break from pleasure. You have part 2, which is the magic, and then part 3 we'll talk about shortly, which is the medicine. But I want to jump into part 2 just briefly. And you say it's important to feel a sense of magic of existence. What does that mean, and why is that important?
I guess it's hope. It's too easy, as we've just been saying, to be sucked into the pressures and stresses of the immediate moment. And we forget that there is beauty and possibility and pleasure. And I see yet again, as I say it, you take a good breath and you relax, right? We all forget. We all forget the beauty of the world that surrounds us, within which we are living. And it matters because it's true and because it's real, because life offers us so many opportunities to participate in and create beauty, and that makes life worth living. All those magical moments of synchronicity or creativity, where you put 2 things together that you didn't expect, and then suddenly there's an enlivening alchemy. Or I don't know, there's a million examples where you see a sunset over water, or a sunrise, or you climb a mountain, or you do a piece of work where you're really proud of yourself, where you see your child or your parent or your partner differently than you see them most of the time, and you remember the beauty, the pleasure, the delight of life. And that's why we keep going, right? Because we know it's there. Even when we get stuck in the mess, we know that there's magic inside each of us, and we know it's possible to live a magical life. Whatever words we might use for it, we might call it other things. Magic may not be a very cool word, right?
But I mean, I hear what you're saying, because it's magic, but I think your definition also means paying attention. Paying attention to these parts of your life that are important and collectively present who you are as the human being that you are.
I guess you could call them moments of surprise. I feel like it's like you turn the corner and suddenly you see this gorgeous landscape that you weren't expecting. Suddenly you know, it's what we've forgotten. Yeah, it is to do with paying attention. And when we shift our perception, how the world appears to us and how we participate in it changes. Everything rearranges itself according to our perception and our experience.
Part 3 of your book is the medicine, and I just love these definitions that you have in here, and so many of them apply to me. But those of you listening, I'm sure you will also recognize that you do need some medicine. And I want to just go through a few of them, because they're each of them is unique in their own case. The first medicine is slowing down, which I think those of us in the West actually need to recognize that more and more. And I love what you do. You're saying, stop what you're doing, get off the playing field and look at it. Or talk a little bit about slowing down. Give us some examples too, if you would.
So usually our mind is racing 1,000,000 miles, and our body is right here and right now, which means that our bodies and our minds are not united. So slowing down doesn't literally mean that we need to stop what we're doing. It means perhaps pausing, so that we can begin to sense ourselves. We can gather energy. We can remember, yeah, it's me. I'm here in the midst of all this busyness. So it might be driving in the car and arriving at the destination, and instead of jumping out immediately, it might be pausing in the car just for a moment. Or the telephone rings or the doorbell rings, and instead of jumping up instantly to answer it, pause just for a moment. Remember ourselves amidst the doingness, amidst the to-do list. It's the beginning of slowing down. It's the beginning of becoming sensitive. It's the beginning of unifying mind and body into the same tempo.
Yeah, I read that portion and I was thinking, we do rush around so much that we are losing out on the subtleties, going out in nature for a walk and just thinking it as an exercise routine rather than paying attention to the trees and the birds and the foliage and what's, the seasonal changes. I think it's a real mistake that we are so caught up in trying to be and make money and have a fulfilling life, and we're the little subtleties of life are passing us by.
I can think about it in terms of fashion as well. The pressure to have the latest device, the latest car, the latest clothes, the latest this, that, and the other. What's the speed? What's there's nothing to miss out on. Life is here. Life is now. And I remember when my daughter was younger, and she would say that the adults were missing out on all that she could see when we would go for walks in the woods. And I remember when I was a child and I felt that I could see and feel and notice so much more than the adults around me. I think that children very often still have that fresh, slow perspective. They're still in the magic time. And it's great for us adults to pause and begin to slow down. And then we can begin to come back to ourselves. We matter.
I think that's a great explanation. I have to say that when my son was very young, I lived vicariously through his excitement. And I think as adults, we love to see our kids opening gifts at Christmas, at birthday times. And we get the sense of pleasure, I think, when we watch our children enjoying life. So that's a good one. Talk about the body. How is the body medicine? I mean, I can talk a little bit about it, but I'm interested in what you define, how you bring in the body as a pleasure center.
I'm interested to hear what you have to say, as you've also just been writing about it. For me, it is that the body is where we live, right? I mean, our lives are lived through our bodies. It's reality, and somehow in modernity we seem to forget that or ignore it or not notice it most of the time, except for, you know, here or there some fast grabbed temporary pleasure. So the body is an amazing piece of choreography. It is far organized in a far more intelligent way than any of us could create. You know, I used to say that I can bake a cake or I can make a stew, but I can't make a baby, right? It's miraculous how a baby is made inside the womb. And it's amazing how our bodies are all of the time silently and invisibly underneath the smooth skin, orchestrating this great recalibration again and again and returning us to health. There's so many things that are going on inside the body. And the body is exquisitely sensitive. And the body is where we live. There is no life except inside this body. Your body, my body, everybody's body. It matters. It's real. And however fast our minds are going and however much, you know, blah, 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 the truth, the reality is here and now in our bodies.
Cloud is powering tomorrow's transformative missions. Federal agencies are partnering with SAIC to help them meet these critical moments, where bold moves require confident blueprints, where you can accelerate transformation through consistency, where you can innovate forward and never look back. SAIC quickly and securely migrates large-scale workloads to the cloud with the confidence you need to assure your mission. Learn more at saic.com/cloud.
To be a thriver means asking for what you want. So I asked my doctor for Kisqali, ribociclib, a prescription medicine taken with an aromatase inhibitor in premenopausal women with HR-positive, HER2-negative metastatic breast cancer, which is breast cancer that has spread to other parts of the body. Visit mbcmedication.com or call 1-800-282-7630. Kisqali can cause lung problems, including breathing problems, cough, or chest pain, skin reactions such as severe or worsening rash, or an abnormal heartbeat, which may lead to death. It can cause liver problems such as yellowing of the skin or eyes, dark urine, tiredness, loss of appetite, abdominal pain, bruising, or bleeding. Low white blood cell counts resulting in severe infections may occur and include fever, chills, or other symptoms. Most common side effects include headache, dizziness, hair loss, constipation, diarrhea, nausea, or vomiting. These are not all the possible side effects. Avoid grapefruit during treatment. Tell your doctor if you have any new or worsening symptoms, are or plan to become pregnant or breastfeeding. Kisqali is not approved for use with tamoxifen.
Be the candidate investment firms are looking to hire. Become a CFA charter holder. Stand out for having the skills to thrive in the competitive investment industry. Visit cfainstitute.org/learn to find out more about the Level 1 CFA exam.
I think that of the topics of the 7 medicines, the body is one that we tend to overlook simply because, hey, I'm feeling fine. I'm going to do what I do. And they're not really paying attention to the subtle nuances of a pain or maybe some excitement that you feel. What was that excitement I just felt? Well, whatever, I let it go. And those are really critical areas. And I see the body as being ignored as a young person, and then we pay the price as an older person because we didn't quite take care of it. So, but I'm interested in learning more from you on the body as a medicine. What do we need to be more aware of to utilize this?
Well, firstly, respect. I mean, because the body does so many amazing things for us by itself, we just take it for granted because breath happens automatically. We take it for granted. So really the first thing is, and it comes after slowing down, it's noticing that we have a body right here and right now. We have arms and legs and a back and a belly and a chest and a head. I remember I was dating somebody once, and I've always loved the body. And I remember after a while he came back and said to me, in the shower this morning, I suddenly noticed I've got legs. I've got legs. And it was like some discovery for him. He hadn't really realized that he was living inside his own body. So the body is our home. It's where we are grounded. It's where we feel our feelings and sense our sensations. There is a tremendous richness of experience. And when things happen, when we have a headache or a neck ache or a shoulder ache or a backache, it is the body communicating with us, or perhaps more accurately, it's the soul communicating with us through the body. It's trying to get our attention so that we can return to fullest health, to fullest vibrancy, to fullest aliveness, to being on track and on purpose and being our best selves. So I think there's tremendous wisdom, intelligence, knowingness that comes through our flesh that we are wise to wake up to.
I've never thought about that as the soul working through the body and saying, hey, pay attention. You're a lovely being. It took a lot of work to get you to a physical state. I'm incarnated in you. Pay attention. And I know a lot of people who go through life who don't pay attention to their body. And it's a vehicle. I'll do what I want. I'll smoke, I'll drink, I'll whatever. And some of them they don't live as long as they could. So I think they've become numb to the physicality, which I think a lot of us are focused on.
And the body has become objectified, right? It's become, instead of it being personal and belonging to each of us, it's become an object to be judged from the outside. And then we're all critical of our bodies. We want to poke it or shove it to make it be some kind of image. And again, you just said numb to, we become insensitive to the aliveness of our own flesh, which is crazy, and just to say it isn't, my sense is it's not like there's software inside the hardware of the body. It's like the body is infused with soul. This flesh matters. It's not an inert object just to transport us around. It is fundamentally who we are. It's not all that we are, But our bodies matter, and our health matters, and our happiness matters. And that takes place in the body. That's biochemistry, that's physical tension, that's the nervous system, that's every aspect of the cells and the organs and the systems of the body.
Would you say that pleasure of the body also includes, for lack of a better word, the maintenance, the stretching, the walking, the consuming foods and beverages that are helpful to maintaining the body?
Our concept of pleasure is very often an addiction. So what we think of as being pleasurable food that we just shove in and we eat it and we have like we shove it in as quickly as possible and it's almost like, gorge on it for a few moments and we feel satisfied and then afterwards we feel empty again, right? That's not really satisfying pleasure, but it's something, and that's really a part of what I'm really writing about, is that to find the real pleasure, we need to become sensitive again to our bodies. What really tastes delicious to us? Is it, a gorgeous tomato with and I'm not trying to have ideas here about food. It's like for each of us, some people really like spicy lentil soup and some people really don't. It's like find your delicious, not just answering a craving, sugar addiction and blah, 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 blah. It's not about dictates of diet or dictates of exercise. It's about finding what's pleasurable, enjoyable, satisfying for each person. Some people love stretching and it feels really good. For other people, they want to run in the park really fast or they want to swim. That's what does it for them, or play tennis. So it's for each person to bother to find what is pleasurable for them, not in the speed and the stress to push and shove, but to find what really is loveliness.
And that's huge, because I think a lot of us, and I'm have this issue myself, you're looking at others for examples of how you should live without paying attention to your own body, your own psyche. How do I feel about that? Well, what does he think? Oh, I really think he's a great person, so I'm going to follow his lead. In some respects, that might be okay, but I think it's important that we learn to enjoy ourselves and what we desire and want and need more than someone else, wouldn't you say?
It's about developing trust in a part of ourselves that gives us reliable feedback, as opposed to the craving for, and there's nothing wrong with pizza, I can use any example, right? But when things become cravings and addictions and compulsions, where we are trapped by it rather than really sensing into, you might like cheddar cheese, but actually I prefer mozzarella, right? Or whatever it is. And honoring ourselves.
Yeah.
And all of the things that we talked about before, the stress and the digital devices, take us out of ourselves, take us further away from ourselves.
I love this, because what you're saying in big black, or I should say neon lighting, is that we should pay attention, really pay attention to your life more. Pay attention is what you're saying in this book. We don't have time to go all the 7 medicines, but I do want to talk about a couple of other ones that I thought were interesting. You say that depth is a medicine. How is depth a medicine? I find that fascinating.
I think human beings are really arrogant. We've become arrogant. We can program this and we can design that, and we think that we are masters of everything that we can see. We think that we're in control. You talked about dating websites, and, very often it's list what you want, right? It's all very, But life isn't like that, actually. It's not actually about, again, pushing and shoving and being in control and dictating. It's about being in an organic relationship with the unfolding or the unfoldment of life. And depth is, the medicine of depth is that there is so much more going on in every moment than meets the eye or the ruler or the label. And we're all used to snap judgments and quick labels of ourselves as well as others in our haste. And we forget the great depth of life. And we can, when I write, I've looked at it from different angles, right? I've looked at it from the lens of physics and from nature, or from astrology. And each of those inspires awe and humility as we remember that we are just an organic part of life. We are being lived just as much as anything else that we can see outside in nature. And there is a great depth of feelings, and there's a great depth of spirituality that is within us and around everybody else. And again, it's easy not to notice that. And humility, you've taken us actually through the first three medicines: slowing down, body, depth, sensitivity, embodiment, and deepening. And they open us to the possibilities of real relationships and pleasure, because you can't be in a real relationship with somebody unless you're able to really see them and not just see them as an object there to please you or one, right? Mm-hmm. And so the medicine of depth. I can't finish my sentence. It's okay. I don't know where I was going.
You left a lot, but you gave us a lot too. I think what you were saying there is a big one for a lot of people, which is, I want to just say, exposing the authentic self, which is depth, especially when in a new relationship with somebody who you are interested in having a relationship. If you cannot express your depth, which is, I think, another word for authentic self, then you're not revealing your true nature. And I think that can be a real problem. Would you say that's a correlating statement, or what would you say to that?
Totally, yes. Again, we're back to, totally, yes. It's in the real meeting. It's in the real depth, which is complex and complicated and nuanced and, got many dimensions and aspects and colors and textures. Life is not simple and simplistic. We are not simple and simplistic. We are beautifully complex orchestrations, choreographies, and being in touch with all of that depth is fascinating and delightful and humbling and real, and enables the realness of relationships and the realness of pleasure.
You list 4 additional medicines. I'm just going to read them off and then maybe talk about one that I'm curious about hearing from you. Relationship, pleasure, power, and potency are the other 4 medicines that you suggest people consider. I'd like to touch on one just because it's part of the title of your book, which is pleasure. The medicine of sensing, defining. Talk a little bit about being open to pleasure, because I don't think enough of us really understand what that means. I mean, it could be, oh, I'll let myself have a good laugh watching a TV show, but that's at the top of the list. There's a whole bag of subtle pleasures that we need to pay attention to. So I'd appreciate it if you could talk a little bit about what you find or suggest is the medicine of pleasure.
So each of these medicines is, I hope, inspiring and uplifting ideas, but is also practices, is something practical to do. So the medicine of sensing is really, the medicine of pleasure is really starting to, in even more detail, pay attention. So while you were talking, I could feel deliciousness in my fingertips. And then I could feel deliciousness in my mouth. And now I can feel it in my back. And again, they come through the sequential process of the medicines and also not only, right? They come when we give ourselves permission as worthy enough to slow down and be here and drop out of our thoughts and be in relationship with others enough to really, really notice what's going on in our bodies, to really notice what information our eyes are taking in, or our ears. And in this moment arrives a stillness and a quietness. And that's a kind of pleasure too. So it's a real noticing what's here. And it can be, again, for each person, it's different. Some people really love music. And for others, they really love art or food or physical touch or fragrance or gardening. Some people really need to use their hands. Some people really need to use their bodies. Some people really need to use their mouths. And in the end, everything can be delightful. Brushing your hair can be a pleasure. Brushing your teeth can be a pleasure. I guess that what we take to be pleasurable is very often distraction. You mentioned watching a film on TV. Nothing against films. There's some amazing films out there. But it comes back again and again to the body and to sensitivity and to even your hands on the steering wheel or the breath in and out of your nostrils, right? Like any tiny, tiny detail can be gorgeous. And I guess also it's to not expect, we're not talking here that suddenly the whole world suddenly turns into bliss, right? We're not saying that. And it's not at all that anyone fails when they're doing their to-do list, because we've got to do all the stuff of life. We have to do all of that. But it's while washing the dishes to suddenly notice your shoulders or your knees or your foot. There can be pleasure in a thumb, right? That's still pleasure. You can be listening to your partner nagging you, and at the same time, you can be delighting in the smell that's coming in through the window, right? You can choose what you pay attention to. And most of us don't have the 5 basic senses open. So it is a choice and it is a practice and it is an experiment to be playful with all of the elements. I mean, sometimes I'm amazed the difference between a cup of coffee with ordinary milk and a cup of coffee with cream, right? It's just so delicious. Sometimes it's just these little tweaks that really change the quality of our life. And we'll be in pleasure and then we'll lose it and we'll be frustrated again, right? But then sometimes even the frustration, if you really sense into the frustration, sometimes the frustration can also have a kind of subtle deliciousness to it. You know, when you're really annoyed with somebody, your boss, your parent, your child, your partner, the dog, the cabinet, whatever, right? Sometimes there can even be a pleasure in feeling the frustration, feeling it, fully feeling it.
Mm.
And then it changes and it opens up into something else. So there's many ways to find the pleasurableness, directly and indirectly.
I love that. I was just thinking, I was looking at the cover of your book, and there should be a third subtitle, it's to say something like a manual for pleasurable living.
Oh, I love that. A manual for pleasurable living. I love that.
Yeah. Anyhow, the book we've been talking about is The Healing Power of Pleasure, 7 Medicines for Rediscovering the Innate Joy of Being. My guest has been author Julia Paulette Holenberry. As a final question, how do people know when to use these medicines? There's 7 primary medicines, but is it an intuitive thing? Is there something about the medicines that we should innately know how to use, or how would you suggest people use the book to choose a medicine?
I've structured it to be like you could use them to go through it as, a 7-week program. You can also do one a day, but also in a challenging situation, you can begin at the beginning with slowing down and finding the body again and remembering there's depth and coming back into relationship. Finding the pleasure, remembering that you're powerful, and being willing to tap into it and to be a part of the potential of life, right?
Wonderful.
I think playfulness is the note that I would leave. That playfulness, play with the medicines.
Yeah, I love that, because, becoming more innocent and childlike in your abandonment or in your decision making may have benefits, rather than being so serious all the time. Yeah. It's kind of counterintuitive. I really actually think that there are applications of this manual for pleasurableness in work and in reaching and finding fresh solutions and better decisions. So, yeah. Wonderful. Julia, much success on this book. I enjoyed it, and I'm going to delve into it a little bit deeper now that I've spoken to you. And it's really, you're right, it's a healing guide. It's a healing power of pleasure. Fantastic. So thank you very much. It was a real joy to have you on the program.
Thank you very much. I have really enjoyed our exchange. Thank you.
A lot of what she has to say seems simplistic, but then we're getting back into being mindful, being aware of what we're missing, and the simple pleasures of life that she mentioned on many, many levels. I love the title, the subtitle, 7 Medicines for Rediscovering the Innate Joy of Being. This book just came out, and you can get it obviously on Amazon, but if you have a fairly well-stocked local bookstore, or they're willing to order it for you, please do get it. The publisher is Finhorn Press, which is part of the consortium of publishing houses, which is Intertradition, Simon & Schuster, my publisher, and this is a good book, so check it out. The Healing Power of Pleasure. Hey, if you're like me, you are really tired of self-isolating, the whole pandemic has been just a social nightmare for many of us who haven't been able to see our friends, get out, travel because of the restrictions. We have an amazing tour coming up next year. It's the Grand Egyptian Tour 3. It's our third trip that we're doing, May 3rd through the 15th. This is an opportunity to see the ancient past through the eyes of a wonderful Egyptologist, Mohammed Imriam. He is our host. This is a VIP tour of some of the most beautiful sites in ancient Egypt that you'll ever visit. We're going to see the Great Pyramid, the Sphinx, some of the great temples, Abydos. We're going to see the Osirian, Saqqara Pyramid. We're going to see the beauty of ancient Egypt. And this is a diplomatic, or what I call a VIP tour, where everything is covered for you. It's first class from start to finish. And we're throwing in a 40% discount. Yeah, we want as many people to join us as possible. We're about 3/4 full. And this is an outstanding opportunity to see these places. For more information, go to earthAncients.com/tours, TOURS, and see the itinerary, and also check out the registration page with all the details. By the way, the Grand Egyptian Museum will be open later this year. This is a chance for us to see the oldest, the largest museum of ancient artifacts in the world. It's a huge museum, and it is I think it's like 5 football fields long. It's huge, and I'm looking forward to visiting it, and a lot of other people are too. So come out and join us at the Grand Egyptian Tour 3, May 3rd through the 15th, 2022. For more information, go to earthAncients.com/tours. Hope you can join us. All right, that's it for this week. I want to thank my guest today, Julia Paulette Hollenberry. As always, our team, Ruth Thomas, and all the editors and other people that make the show happen. I really appreciate your help. All right, that's it. Take care, be well, and we'll talk to you next time.
Want to know the secret to a great night's sleep? It's Purple. Why? Because only Purple mattresses have the Gel Flex Grid. It's the reason why Purple mattresses are soft where you want it, firm where you need it, and instantly respond to movement. The Gel Flex Grid flexes around pressure points to support your whole body, no matter how you sleep. Plus, the Gel Flex Grid is 80% air. It breathes, so you're not too hot or too cold. Learn more about Purple mattresses and the Gel Flex Grid at purple.com. Purple, reinventing sleep.
Everybody needs just the right amount of fuel to get going in the morning. For some, a nice McDonald's egg and cheese bagel is just enough to do it. Others might prefer a McDonald's bacon, egg, and cheese bagel. Or perhaps a sausage, egg, and cheese bagel. And there are those where nothing will do but a hearty McDonald's steak, egg, and cheese bagel. 4 different breakfast bagels to get you going. Tomorrow morning, give your engine a head start at participating McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.